Good morning and welcome to Worldwide Wisdom. Today is the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. It's the day that the Alter Rebbe was released from his imprisonment in the year 1798. The Tsar had put the Alter Rebbe in prison, and what seemed on earth below to be anti-Semitism, or at best, internal infighting between Jewish groups, Jews who were jealous of the Alter Rebbe and the rise of the popularity of the Hasidus of Chabad in Russia, slandered him to the Russian authorities. And they did so because they, on the pretext that the Alter Rebbe was supporting the Turks, the Ottomans. Now, the Ottomans were in fact ruling in the land of Israel at that time until 1917, right? And in fact, the Alter Rebbe was in fact sending money to the land of Israel. He was sending money to the Jewish people in the land of Israel. In fact, he sent his daughter, his granddaughter, to the land of Israel. Her name was Menucha Rachel. She was the daughter of the Mittler Rebbe, and she was my great grandmother. So that's how we came through the land of Israel. My father's mother's side came through the Rebbe Menucha Rachel. The Alter Rebbe was in fact supporting the Jewish community, but they framed it as supporting the Ottomans, who were the mortal enemies of the Russians, and that's why
Who framed that?
it was the they're known as the Misnagdim, the opponents of the Chabad Mitnagdim. They're the opponents of the Chabad, of the Hasidim. They're Orthodox Jews, but they just are opposed to the Hasidic movement. So that's why they
a revolution among Jews.
Yeah, it's
a
revolution.
Yeah, there's always been infighting in the Jewish community since time immemorial, right? But sometimes it gets uglier than others, and this time it got pretty ugly. And when the Alter Rebbe was thrown into prison, on a superficial analysis, it might have looked like anti-Semitism or perhaps Jewish anti-Semitism. When Jews hate Jews, nobody hates the Jews like the Jews, right? Self-loathing. However, on a spiritual level, the Alter Rebbe taught that really nothing happens below without happening above. On a spiritual level in heaven, it was because the Alter Rebbe was such a revolutionary teaching the teachings of Hasidus to all ordinary mankind. What he was doing, the revolution of Chabad, is to take godly wisdom and to make it rational. To take godly wisdom and to make it rational. This was never something that was authorized from heaven. You know, in fact, there was another time in history, there was someone by the name of Yonatan ben Uziel. Yonatan ben Uziel lived around 2,000 years ago, a little more than that. And what he did was, let's see, he lived first century CE, at the same time as Hillel the Elder. Now, what happened with him is that when he would study Torah, a bird flying overhead, they said would fry, would be incinerated, right? Because such was the holiness of his time. When he began to translate the Torah, Targum Yonatan is the translation of Torah. Translation of Torah into Aramaic of Yonatan. And when he translated the Torah, it wasn't just a translation. You know, whenever you make a translation to another language, you're actually taking the liberty to explain terms, because you cannot ever have an exact, precise translation by definition. Every language has got its nuances and its contexts and its denotations and its connotations. So what then happened was that when he translated the Torah and he was giving his commentary, a heavenly voice cries out, the Talmud says, it said, "Who revealed my secrets to my sons?" Why is Yonatan doing this? That he's sharing mystical secrets to my sons, and ultimately, it was approved. But we see this concept where mortal men are able to actually push the envelope with God, to reveal things that God hasn't necessarily authorized, which is quite a fascinating concept. So that is what Chabad Hasidus is. Chabad Hasidus is godly wisdom that is explained in such a rational way that the Alter Rebbe's life was in peril. He sat in jail for 53 days, corresponding to the 53 chapters of Tanya that he was preparing, that he had published, because it wasn't supposed to be published. But when he was released, that was the day that from heaven they had endorsed, and therefore on earth it also endorsed Alter Rebbe's continuity of his work, and he continued until his passing in the year 1812.
So what's the delta between the Zohar and the Tanya?
Okay, the delta between the Zohar and the Tanya. The Zohar is 2,000 years old. Actually, no, the Zohar is 3,338 years old.
Right.
It was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. However, it was part of the oral Torah. It was a secret part of the oral Torah. You see, the written Torah was to everyone. The written Torah, the oral Torah was taught by teacher to student, and the secret Torah, the sod, was given only in closely guarded circles. Now, that remained a closely guarded secret for many, many hundreds of years, until the days of Ponce de Leon. Was that no? Who was the guy? Moshe de Leon, I think his name was.
Yes.
Moshe de Leon was the one
from Catalan.
From Catalan. See, what happened was that the Sephardic Jews were more liberal with the teachings of Jewish mysticism than the Ashkenazi Jews were. Therefore, when the Spanish expulsion and Inquisition took place, and the Sephardic Jews from Sephardic lands went over to Ashkenazi lands like Netherlands and Germany and other places that were safer for Jews to live in, now they brought with them the teachings of Kabbalah. So there was this discomfort. There were the Kabbalists and the anti-Kabbalists. Right, people that felt that you were being too liberal with these teachings, and others that felt you should be more liberal with these teachings. Right, so therefore, this is why a lot of people are confused about when the Zohar was written. Some people say, "Oh, it was only 500-600 years ago." It was, because that's when it was revealed to you. That's when your family found out about it. But it doesn't mean that. Right. Of course, it started at Mount Sinai. Now, what still happened was, when the Jews came out of the Spanish expulsion, it was still very, very difficult to understand. It was unintelligible, very difficult to understand.
Anyway.
Extremely difficult to understand. Came the Arizal 500 years ago. Now, Arizal, he was an Ashkenazi Jew from Germany who moved to Tzfat, and he made it accessible. Yeah, but the novelty. Isaac Luria made it accessible through his teacher was Moshe Cordovero. There was an evolution. Ultimately, the Baal Shem Tov made it. I'm going to use the word relatable. I write about this in the introduction to my book. Democratized it. That's what the Baal Shem Tov did exactly. Well, that's a very good term. He democratized it. He made it accessible to all. And then the Alter Rebbe, whose festival we're celebrating today, was the one who made it rational. And that is the evolution of Chassidus. It started off as unintelligible Kabbalah, secret. You didn't even have access to it for no money. Then, 700 years ago, you got access to it, but you couldn't understand it. Came the Arizal, and he starts explaining it to you, but it's like, came the Baal Shem Tov, and he started explaining it in simple terms. But then came the Alter Rebbe, and he's really taking the deepest teachings in a rational way. That is what Chabad is, relational, says Alam. Right, relational became something that you can actually relate to and comprehend and meditate and contemplate, and that's what Chabad is. Chabad is not the way we dress. Chabad is not the siddur that we use to pray with. Chabad is not a bunch of idiosyncratic customs. Chabad is the ability to comprehend and meditate on godliness. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
He also enhanced its dignity. By that I mean he made it possible for the Miknagdim and those who are resistant to it to come over and expose themselves to his teachings and ultimately accept his.
Of course, but some of them didn't want to. Some of them didn't want to.
Some did,
and some did. Right, of course. So those that did, those that tasted of it, were taken by it. Now, bear in mind, you have to understand the insecurities of the Mitnagdim. The Misnagdim, those that were opposed to Chassidus, they were afraid. They said you can't touch that stuff because they thought it's a cult. You touch that stuff, it's going to suck you in. Right? It's kind of like what some of your friends might say, don't go to Chabad.
My parents.
Don't go to Chabad. They're going to brainwash you because you, sir, you cannot be trusted. You are not smart enough to protect yourself, to discern. You are way too vulnerable and weak. Right, so I mean,
my mother.
You can protect you. You're able to watch any movie you want, and you're able to engage and with any male or female in whatever degrees of intimate relationships you want, because you're able to protect yourself. But from the rabbi, OMG, no way. There's no way you'll be able to defend yourself from the rabbi. You can engage in commerce without a supervisor. You can engage in relationships and marriage and parenting without a supervisor. But from the rabbi, don't even get close. Right? See, this is how people are afraid. The Kiddush they're afraid of, right?
The friendliness.
So just like in those days, they were afraid of, they're afraid that somebody's actually going to be nice to you. And then what's going to happen?
That is a concern.
They're going to suck you in because they're going to make you feel comfortable.
Then they're going to
Heaven forfend.
That your family be nice to you.
Right. And they might actually care about you. They might listen to you. Whoa, that's getting way too manipulative, right? So this, when you're afraid of a cult, you don't even get near it. You don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And that's what the approach. You have to understand the insecurities of the Misnagdim. They were afraid that this was some sort of like neo-Christian cult.
Right, with
It's
justification.
going to take over.
Yeah.
But Rabbi, wasn't there another issue going on where the rabbis were learned and they basically had a complete monopoly on the learning?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very important point that you raised, because as Steve just pointed out, that what the Baal Shem Tov did is that he democratized Chassidus, Torah, really, right? And whereas until then it was a hierarchy. You know, if you couldn't afford a Jewish education, you were going to be stuck as a grave digger. You go to the grave digger's shul, or you go to the cobbler's shul, or the tailor's shul. You're stuck with the deadbeats, as opposed to hanging out with the scholars, right?
With the Chicago attorneys.
Yeah, that's right. So there was a schism within the Jewish community, and the Hasidus represented the breaking down of those walls. Judaism was no longer siloed, and they didn't like that, right? You can imagine the spiritual elites and the scholastic elites didn't like the breaking down of those barriers. So that's a very, very important point. Now, with all that introduction, let's now learn some Hasidus. So we're learning the Mayim Rabim.
Sorry, I took you out.
No. That's a good question.
It's important.
So with what we're learning about, we're learning now Mayim Rabim. Mayim Rabim is an unbelievable discourse. Mayim Rabim means that the tumultuous waters will not be able to drown your love of God. What this refers to is financial anxieties. The Alter Rebbe is telling us in this 1807 discourse, and we're learning it in sequence and in flow. If you go to youtube.com to my channel and you click on the playlist, you look for Mayim Rabim, coping with life's challenges. You can watch all the videos in this sequence. So what happened there is that King Solomon told us a cryptic verse. Solomon tells us a verse which doesn't really make sense, that the tumultuous waters will not be able to extinguish the love, and the rivers won't be able to wash it away. So nobody really knew what King Solomon was talking about, because again, it was cryptic Kabbalah. Marty, like we said, that it was cryptic, couldn't understand it. King Solomon belted out this pearl of wisdom. Nobody had any idea what the man was referring to, right? Until came the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe explained. He's talking about the flood of your life. What's the flood of your life? The financial anxieties that God sends to you, right? And he says financial anxieties won't be able to drown out your spirituality. On the contrary, they're going to fan the flames, right? They're going to fan the flames. And that is what we are talking about in this discourse. Today, we're going to learn about how the waters not only do they not destroy, they don't drown your love, but in fact, they uplift it. And the example we used is the flood of Noah, right? Where the flood was there. If God wanted to destroy the world, he could have done so through some sort of a plague like he did to the Egyptians. In fact, he did this whole messy thing of 40 days, the flood that lasted a year, because God was actually cleansing the world like a mikvah, right? And Noah and his family were uplifted. They rose above, right? So what we're working towards today, and the point I'd like to reach is that how can you reach a point where the floodwaters, the financial anxieties, not only do they not mitigate your spirituality, but in fact enhance it? How does that happen? So we learned in this discourse previously that it's because of contemplation. You're forced to meditate. When you've got a crisis, an anxiety, a problem, you're forced to meditate over it and to neutralize it in your head. And when you do so, when you meditate over it in your head and you neutralize it, then what happens is that you are engaging your animal soul. Normally it's your godly soul that's serving God, but when you're engaging your animal soul, which is the one concerned with money and problems and headaches, and you're educating your animal soul, it's like taking a harness and putting it on a horse. It's like taking a yoke and putting it on an ox. And now you're much more powerful than when you were just a human all by yourself. When you engage the animal and you train the animal, then what you're doing is that you actually have far more power than you had before. So when we are faced with a problem, with an anxiety, and we meditate our way through it to the point that we are no longer worried about it because we've meditated on the spirituality of the problem. What now happens is that your animal soul is engaged. And therefore you're serving God not only with your godly soul, but also with your animal soul. And when that happens, we've learned earlier, you get the power of Esau, you get the power of the world of Tohu, not just the world of Tikkun, the world of Jacob. And Rav Tvois, B'Kayach Shur, says King Solomon, they are far more yield with the power of the ox, right? So where this is going is that one might think that if you're an ordinary Jew as opposed to a scholar, your prayer is far less valuable to God. Surely God would want a rabbi's prayer than a plumber's prayer. Today's Mayim tells us no, not at all. Because the rabbi is living a life which is steeped in spirituality. The rabbi who's sitting and studying Torah all day and all night, and he has no financial anxieties because someone else is paying his salary. What happens? He's serving God only with his godly soul. But it's the plumber who's worried about the leak. He's worried about the mortgage. He's worrying about the neighbor. He's worried about the lawyer. He's worried about the troubles, right? Making ends meet and payroll. That lawyer, the plumber, whoever, the person engaged in the real world, is forced to balance out his anxieties with meditation. And he's forced to bring his animal soul to the table. And that's why his prayer is far more cherished by God, far more powerful to God than the rabbi's prayer. And you see here how the Alter Rebbe was breaking the silo Judaism.
That's revolutionary.
He's breaking the hierarchies. Like he's saying, that there's a way that even the scholars can become as holy as the shoemakers. Can you imagine how the scholars would have taken that? Not well.
Not well.
Right. And that's why you understand why there was those accusations against the Alter Rebbe. They were like, you're ruining the whole thing. Right? You're messing it all up.
Dismantling the whole social order.
Bad for business.
Yeah, it's not good for business. Let's learn this idea inside the original text. I'm on page 171 if you have the copies. You should have. Yeah, those are the copies. Right? Page 171. So let's just summarize the flow. God flooded the world in the times of Noah to purify it from its corruption, similar to how a mikveh, a ritual bath, purifies the impure. This explains why the flood is called the waters of Noah. For as the name Noah implies, out of the flood emerged the sense of calm, Noach, and comfort, Nichum. So we said that May Noach was an expression from Isaiah, who said that the flood is called the flood of calm, the flood of serenity. First page.
161, not
162.
162.
You said 171, Rabbi.
Confused us.
No, you're in a different book. It's not the same
section.
one.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So we're just summarizing, guys, just getting into it, right?
Sorry.
These waters of Noah, which is the paradox, the flood, the deluge of serenity, it's a paradox, are also relevant today. King Solomon proclaims, abundant waters cannot extinguish the love, and rivers will not wash it away. That's from Song of Songs. The abundant water, says the Alter Rebbe, a man's financial worries and worldly concerns, yet they cannot extinguish the latent love that exists naturally in every Jew. These abundant waters are the waters of Noah of our times. Just as the original flood waters elevated the world, so too financial struggle can become a source of spiritual elevation. When one channels their worldly experience into contemplation during prayer, they can reach a profound and all-consuming love for God that is even greater than the soul experienced before descending into this world. This love is unbridled since it is aroused by channeling the darkness of the worldly challenges into light and love for God. That was the summary of what we've learned so far. Let's go further inside of the text. So the original text, and remember the reason we study the text is so that you can meditate on it afterwards, right? And that's the purpose of study. It's one thing to hear it the first time, but that's just in and one ear and out the other. You got to be able to really review it, read it over and over and over again in order to, whatever. So, or you have copies over here. So let's read this inside the text. We can now better appreciate two ideas discussed above. First, it says in Ethics of the Fathers, better 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world than all the life of the world to come. That's an interesting statement. Better 1 hour in this world than all the life of the world to come. This is like the opposite of Christianity. Think about that for a moment. Yeah. Think about that for a moment. Some guy died for your sins, right? It's a glorification of death. Right, in a church, it's a glorification of death. They have a guy hanging on the wall, and Islam, what's it called? Fanatic Islam jihad
Islam.
is about fantasizing and glorifying death, right? Judaism says the exact opposite. It says no. 1 hour in this world is better than all of heaven. What's that supposed to mean? That's what it says. What?
The whole point is to get to the world to come.
That's incorrect. I disagree with you. I disagree with you. I don't believe that the purpose of life is to get to the world to come.
So then why do you say may your soul be blessed in Gan Eden?
If you're already in heaven.
Why don't you say, I bless you to have 1 good hour here on earth?
We do. We do. What happens when somebody does something good? You say to him, Yeshakayach. What does Yeshakayach mean? May your strength be strengthened. That's what you're saying to them. You're not saying to them, I hope you die soon so you go to heaven. You don't say that to him. You say, no. Keep it up. Double down. Do more such mitzvahs. That's what we're saying to the person. Yasher kayach, may your strength be replenished.
So when Mashiach comes, why don't we just stay here?
We do.
Why are we going somewhere
What do you
else?
think's going to happen when Mashiach comes? Think about it. You answer your own question. What happens when Mashiach comes? You know the answer to this.
Resurrected?
Oh, Tazai. Right? You know Mashiach comes, resurrection of the dead. So what then is
Well,
heaven?
where? What do you mean where? But that's the world to
Purgatory.
come. In Cleveland.
The world to come chronologically, but spatially it's right here. Now, what then is the role of heaven? It's an interesting question. So what is the role of heaven? So
It's the waiting room.
oh, Tazoi. Heaven is the waiting room. Because Mashiach technically hasn't arrived yet.
I thought Miami was the way.
Used to be.
Mashiach hasn't arrived yet.
You seen
Right.
the traffic lately?
Mashiach hasn't arrived yet. So what are you doing? So where are you going to go? You can't be in this world anymore because heaven has deemed you no longer necessary in this world. Birth is when heaven deems you necessary here. Death is when heaven deems you no longer needed here. But where am I needed? Where am I going? So we put you up in heaven, right? Which is like a retirement home for souls, right? And they're waiting. What are they waiting? They're waiting for Mashiach so they can return to their bodies. That's what they're doing. That is what heaven is. Now, if you're already in heaven and we miss our loved ones, we say, listen, we're going to give you an upgrade. I'm going to sponsor a Kiddush in your memory. I'm going to build a building in your honor, right? I'm going to do a dedicated classroom in honor of my deceased relative. So that way we're elevating their souls if they're already in heaven. But hey, if we had a way of bringing them back here, that would absolutely be our first choice. And you can bring them back here. How do you bring them back? By bringing Mashiach, right? So I'm so glad you picked up on this point, Rob, because it really is counterintuitive. I'll give an example. One of the members of our community is in yeshiva, a non-Chabad yeshiva. He's in a non-Chabad yeshiva. So I asked him what is he studying, and he tells me he's studying a piece of Talmud in Ksubos, the beginning of Tractate Ksubos, which talks about marital unions, talks about conjugal relations. And I mean, the whole tractate is about conjugal relations, but it talks about the piece he was studying about was talking about the sins which are cardinal. I don't know what cardinal means. What does cardinal mean?
These guys wear red hats. In the
What does a cardinal sin mean?
I think
Very
it's
serious.
No,
It's one of the seven.
No, 7 cardinals is a Christian thing. We have 3 cardinals. I don't know what a cardinal means, but how about this? The 3 sins that are unchangeable.
Ordinal.
The most important sins. How's that, right? What are the 3 most important sins? Murder, adultery, and idolatry. Now, Lashon Hara is comparable to all 3 together, which is an interesting point. But murder, adultery, and idolatry, which means like this. If someone puts a gun to your head and says, I will kill you unless you kill that person. Are you allowed to kill that person, or should you die? What's the answer?
I kill that person, but I-
The answer is, why is the Talmud says, why is his blood, why is your blood redder than his?
Right.
You can pay for your life with his life.
Right.
So you gotta remain passive and see what happens. Right? So you're not allowed to kill in order to save your life, right? Now adultery,
Murder.
not allowed to murder, correct. Now adultery is comparable to murder, as is idolatry. This is what the Talmud discusses, right? There in the Talmud gets into discussion. The Talmud differentiates between men and women. The Talmud says when it comes to murder, men and women are the same. When it comes to idolatry, men and women are the same. But when it comes to adultery, the Talmud splits a hair. When it comes to adultery, who is passive and who is active? The Talmud says that when it comes to adultery, the man is certainly engaged. Right? Why? The Talmud says because you cannot, the Talmud says you cannot become erect without being mindful, right? And therefore a man is absolutely engaged.
Well, of course.
But does the woman play a role in marital relations, yes or no? The Talmud says no.
She doesn't play a role.
She doesn't play a role. Why? The Talmud calls her karka olam. She's the ground of the earth. That's what the Talmud says. She's the ground of the earth. Now, she can play a role if she wants to, but if she doesn't want to, for example, in the case of rape. So she's just karka olam. She's just passive. She doesn't do anything. So in other words, are you going to tell her that she has to get killed or experience the adultery? No, she's not doing anything. So the Talmud says that a man has 3 sins that he cannot violate, right? But a woman only has 2 sins she cannot violate. A woman only has 2 sins. A woman has to die for murder or idolatry, but when it comes to adultery, she didn't do anything.
Even if it was
voluntary. So a woman in the Talmud and the Jewish law, a woman cannot commit rape on a man.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on.
Well, that's interesting. Let me just think about that a second. A woman can a woman rape a man? I mean,
In Illinois, in Springfield, she can, but not in.
I didn't even understand the question. How can a woman rape a man? I don't understand.
Oh, come on, it's happened.
Is that a
We're
thing?
talking about-
I never heard of this.
We're talking about things other than intercourse.
Oh, we are.
Oh, you're talking about molestation now.
Oh, molestation,
Verbal.
Not
Verbal.
not
oral.
Okay, look,
No,
fine.
oral.
So Rob,
Verbal.
so hang on, Rob.
AURA.
So hang on. So when it comes to
AURA.
molestation, of course, the woman can molest a man, absolutely, 100%. But I'm talking about, I'm not sure that I'm qualified to address this issue. It's a very, very sensitive issue, and I'm very cautious of offending. I'm very cautious of offending people who might have been victims of abuse, because there are people that have been abused, molested by females, and I would not want to minimize that in the slightest which way. Okay, so I want to be very, very careful about that. I want to just address what the Talmud is talking about. Maybe one day we can talk about that topic. It's an interesting topic.
So
Probably.
on whatever, why is there a whole Gemara about the sota?
Hang on a second, just 1 second. So the Talmud asks the question. Before we go to different Talmud, let's talk about this Talmud, right? So the Talmud says that a woman can remain passive if she wants to during marital relations, and therefore she's not doing anything. The rape happened to her, not with her, right? For example, when Esther is a married woman, the Talmud says. She's married to Mordechai, and now Achashverosh marries her. He rapes her every time she's with him. Yeah, he forced her. So, and what would happen if she said no? You know what happened to the previous wife that said no? Right. That's called forced. Yeah. So when Vashti said no to the king, it didn't go well. So Esther understood that her options were extremely limited. So every time Achashverosh was with Esther, he was raping her. Now, when Mordechai says to Esther, I need you to go solicit the king. This is the story you didn't hear in Hebrew school. He wasn't asking her to just go and have a chat with the king, right?
Seduce.
He was asking her to seduce the king, right? To win his graces. There was one language that this man understood, right? So when Esther responds to Mordechai, something fascinating. This is what the Tosfos writes of there in the Gemara. Says her response to Mordechai is, if I go to the king, Kasher avadati. As I am lost, I am lost. What is that double expression in the Megillah? As I am lost to you, my husband Mordechai, I will be lost to him as well. I won't be allowed to be with my husband or my paramour. Remember, we learned in Sota Tractate that when a woman commits adultery willingly and actively, not passively, but actively, she's forbidden to her husband and to the paramour forever. So this is what she's saying. Let me just finish this point. It's a very sensitive point. I want to make sure you understand this. She says to her husband, Mordechai, if I do as you wish, I'll never be able to be with you again or with Achashverosh ever again, right? So she's saying I'll be lost. And then she adds something else, a deeper interpretation. As I will have lost my portion in this world because I'll never be able to be with my husband again, I will have also lost my portion in the world to come. And this is what she says to Mordechai. As I've lost, I've lost. I've lost this world, I've lost the next world. I will be sacrificing my portion in heaven, in Olam Haba, because I will be actively, willfully violating a commandment that I'm not allowed to transgress. Why? For my people. And the Tosfos, I'm sorry, what were you going to ask me something? Go ahead.
What was Mordecai's response?
Oh, so before we get to the response, were you going to say something about this? Or
Yeah, but you can wait. But
So-
but it's not a transgression for a woman. How is this a transgression for a woman?
because she's being active.
okay, so
By
what-
seducing, she's being active.
Okay,
She
so
can be
that's
passive.
but not
But she
necessarily.
can also be
So
the
she's
initiator.
so
Of course. And that's what she's doing. She's seducing, which is probably the answer to your question, to your earlier question, right? So she's now being actively seduced. So what does Mordechai tell her? It's a time to do what needs to be done for Hashem, even if it means overruling the Torah. He tells her, go for it. You do what you have to do to save your people. And that's when the Tosfos ends off and it says, Minashim ba'oil taverach. The Tosfos quotes a verse that says that, ironically, two women that the Tosfos quotes, which is Esther, who did this to Achashverosh, and another woman, her name was Yael. Yael was a married woman. She did this to Sisra. If you remember the story of Sisra, I'm not getting into it right now. Same story exactly.
Spike in the head.
Yeah, the spike in the head. But how did she get him to sleep? How did she make him very tired?
Wine.
By the way,
More than milk.
The way women do it.
She gave him more than milk. Okay, so what happened was that she
Melatonin
seduced him, right?
plus-
And that's how he fell into a deep slumber, and that's when she spiked him in the head, right? So the Tosfos concludes that she became, these women, Yael and Esther, rose to the highest heights of heaven.
Mm.
By sacrificing their portion in the world to come, ironically, they received the greatest portion. There's a beautiful story, a similar story about the Baal Shem Tov. That the Baal Shem Tov was one, I think it was the Baal Shem Tov or the Maggid, one of the two. Somebody came over with them, begging them for a prayer for, I think it was for a child. Desperate for a prayer for a child. And they persisted and they cajoled and they begged and they pleaded. Ultimately, the Maggid said, okay, a orphan, have a child. Give him a blessing. And a heavenly voice called out and said,
What?
like, you're going to have to pay for that with your portion in heaven. Like, there's no account for that. You're going to have to pay for it with your own equity. So then whoever it was, I don't remember exactly the details of the story, but maybe the Maggid of Mezrich, whose yard said it today, he said, oh, Baruch Hashem, for the first time in my life, I'm now able to serve God without an ulterior motive. Can you imagine? You
Wow.
came into this conversation. You provoked me now by saying, isn't that the whole purpose of it all, to get to heaven? Yet this person, this tzaddik, this Maggid, he says, now, for the first time in my life, I'm able to truly serve God for no ulterior motives.
That's
So
heavy.
I turned around to these yeshiva students here in the community. I said, no, so would you be willing to sacrifice your portion of the world to come for your people? And without batting an eyelid, they said, no. That's the novelty of what we're learning here, friends. Today we're learning that when you serve God in this world for even an hour, even a moment, it is so much more. It is so much more powerful. It is so much more meaningful than all of what you can do in heaven. Because in heaven, you're serving God in the world of Tikkun, in the world of Jacob, with your godly soul. Only in this world can you serve God with your Esav, with your Tohu, with your animal soul. And when you engage the animal, the heights are indescribable. That's why you'll notice in this week's Torah portion, somebody asked me last night at the golf event. So why is it that Jacob knowingly sends Joseph to see his brothers in this week's Torah portion? He knows that it's dangerous. Why does he do it? And Rashi hints when he says that Jacob understood that when he sent him to when he sent him to the depths of Shechem, to this physically and spiritually degraded place, he understood that this was the ultimate purpose of it all. This is where the Jewish slavery in Egypt begins. The whole Jewish exile begins when Joseph is sold as a slave by his brothers on this dispatch from his father, because Jacob intuitively understood that the purpose of life is by engaging in the darkness and transforming the darkness into light, by encountering the dysfunction in our lives and transforming the dysfunction into function, by being able to contemplate over the financial anxieties and the other medical anxieties in our lives and to transform them into holiness. And now we will be fulfilling the purpose of why we were in this world in the first place. Because if you're going to put yourself into a silo, if you're going to stay Jacob in the house of Isaac, and you're going to be the ship that's in the harbor, and you're always going to be safe, you might as well have stayed in heaven. And the most beautiful example of this, I just want to conclude, the most beautiful example of this is when the generation of Jews in the desert, having come out of Egypt, they said, we don't want to go into the land of Israel because there's too many financial anxieties over there. We'll be distracted from Torah study. We have to fight wars against Hamas and Hezbollah. And the United Nations, you'd have to have a desk at the United Nations. It's horrible. We don't want that. We'd rather stay in the clouds of glory. So how does God react? The spaghetti hits the fan. He says, well, I'm going to kill you all.
40 years.
It sounds like God had a total meltdown. Very ungodly. Non-presidential behavior, right? Unpresidential. So why does God do this? The Rebbe explains, not that God lost his cool. God said, listen, if that's what you want, fine. But then you serve no purpose in this world. So you might as well just check out and go to heaven.
40 years to do that.
Fine, you wanted to do it civilly. You know what I mean?
Gave him a while till he got there.
You wanted to do it, you want to kill them all in one shot. But this is why we're here. We're here to engage in the darkness, to meditate over the darkness. We spoke about the 5 levels of meditation, so that ultimately we will be able to engage our animal soul, our Esau, our Tohu, to be able to turn that into godliness, into holiness, to ride the wave that we'd never have been able to ride without the animal soul being engaged. And that's why the prayer of the ordinary Jew is so much more cherished and so much more valuable to God than the prayer of the rabbi who's not engaged at all. And I got to tell you, what's a Chabad rabbi? Chabad rabbi, people often think, Chabad rabbi, somebody once said to me, Rabbi, you have a real easy job. The only thing you have to worry about is to make a sermon on Shabbos. It's like, that's it. I don't even know how to respond to this guy, because the Chabad rabbi is, I'll give you a quick story. So these parents were concerned about what their child's going to turn out. The teenager was having conflicting behavior patterns. So they came to the rabbi. What are we going to do with that teenage son? The rabbi said, why don't you test him out? Hide in the closet when you know he's coming into the house. And on the table, leave 3 items: a bottle of booze, $100 bill, and a chumash. You'll see which one he picks up. If he picks up the chumash, he'll become a rabbi. If he picks up the bottle of booze, he'll become a drunkard. If he picks up the money, he'll become an entrepreneur. And you'll know. Perfect. Brilliant. Husband arrived, they're hiding in the closet. The kid walks in. He takes the $100 bill, puts it into his pocket, takes the chumash, slips it under his arm, he takes the bottle of booze, and he walks out. So the mother faints in the closet. When the husband finally revives her, says, what happened to you? She says, never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine that our son would turn into a Chabad rabbi.
That's self-deprecating humor, Rabbi.
It's not self-deprecating. It's not self-deprecating at all. It's not that deprecating at all. This is what we do.
That's why we're here, Rabbi.
Absolutely. The rabbi is a spiritual entrepreneur. The Chabad rabbi. The Chabad rabbi, not other rabbis. I don't even know what they do all day. Honestly, they study. I don't know. But yeah, boring. They're on payroll. I don't know. But the Chabad rabbi is a spiritual entrepreneur, and he's got to drink. He's got to say l'chaim. He's got to dig into your kishkis. But together with that, he's also the fabrings, right? But together with that, he's also going to be responsible for for fundraising and for construction and for other components of the community. But together with that, he's also going to be a scholar. So that's it's a very interesting role that the Rebbe gave our generation of shluchim, right? And I'm very proud of it. Honestly, for me, I've never worked a day in my life. It's not a job; it's a calling. It's something which I feel is in my bones and what I'm supposed to do for the rest of my life. And I'm excited to do this because I feel that this is how I'm serving God. Folks, we learned one line today. We learned one Mishnah. We learned a better 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world than all the life of the world to come. Thank you very much.
I just sent you 2 lines of Leonard Cohen.
Have a good day.
I'm relating to this.
Which one? We want to know
Yeah.
previous life that you had to be a Chabad rabbi in this life.
What did I do to deserve this? I'm not sure. I was chosen. Thank you, folks. We're going to turn this off, right? Unless you want to be on.
Well, What confuses me are your hand motions.
My hand motions?
Yes.
My hand motion. They confuse me.
Earlier, you said the world to come is here. And then later on, when you were talking, you said the world to come, and you pointed upward. What are you pointing upward for the world to come? The world
Should be
to
right
come is
here.
Exactly.
You're right.
So don't confuse me with your hand.
You're right. I want to tell you, somebody who was commenting, one of the viewers here was commenting, that the rabbi looks anxious. I want to tell you, somebody was commenting, the rabbi looks anxious. And I want to tell you, I'm sure it was. Some of my YouTube viewers, they don't know me personally, so they get a little confused about me because there's a certain dissonance with my what I'm saying and maybe with the way I'm looking, because listen, I've got shpilkas. Shpilkas is, my restless leg syndrome. I don't know what that is. If it's a syndrome, I'm on the move. I don't exactly allow grass to grow under my feet. I'm on the move. You know what I mean? So we shuckle when we, especially if the non-Jews are watching me here. They might be a little confused because, if you speak to a non-Jewish scholar, he'll talk like this and cerebral, and they're not moving. And they're calm. But when you learn Torah, it's like this, you know what I mean? It's all over the map. We're excited because our soul's on fire. And when your soul's on fire, then you shake a leg, you shake an arm. All my bones, all my limbs are calling out. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.